get tired. So, because like during the day, I'm usually, and it's also all the light, and I'm usually okay. And then all of a sudden at night, I'm like reading and I can't see anything. And and I'm like, why can't I read this? And this is
So are you supposed to resist using them if you can?
No, I don't think you got a choice.
No.
Like,
If you can't read them, you need them. But
right,
if
it's
you
like,
can,
oh my God, but it's like frustrating because like it happened, for a lot of people, the whole reading glasses thing usually sets in around, in the mid 40s or something. But for me, it kind of didn't start until the early 50s. And so I'd thought that I'd kind of missed it. Right? And also because I'm aware that at least the way it was taught to me was that if you are nearsighted, then generally it means that you don't have reading glasses.
Longer. It's
Right,
sense,
but I'm aware of bifocals, so obviously that it does, the concept exists. But I guess my point is that usually though, if you don't need glasses, then you most likely are going to need reading glasses. And I had that surgery, the LASIK surgery about 20 years ago or 25 years ago. And so I don't know how that affects everything, but
It makes it come sooner, see? Well,
yeah, well, it is, you can't, like, especially when it's like when it's new, right? Because you're used to like saying, of course I'll be able to read this. And then suddenly, you're trying to read something and I'm like, I cannot read this for the life of me.
what do you do about it? Do you
Cry. I usually like to complain, cry. I blame others.
use your electronic media like Kindle or whatever?
No, it's usually like reading like the paper or something like that.
Paper is more difficult.
Yeah.
Then that's one nice thing about electronic media. You can at least
Just
enlarge
the
the font,
yeah, exactly
or
correct.
change the background.
Exactly correct. But oh well. Well, anyway, hi everybody. Hi Freya, Jerry, nice to see you. Charles, I don't see you, but I recognize that background. Sharon, hi Sharon. I know exactly where you are right now. I recognize that spot. Is Stephen with you?
Let's see. Yeah, I need to wake him up. He's taking one of his cat naps.
Tell him it's a great idea to take naps at around 7 o'clock at night because
Isn't it?
like
It does wonders. Yeah.
4 o'clock in the afternoon is one thing. 7 o'clock at night. What are you, crazy? I mean, he's insane.
Well, I'm not
Sandy,
answering. Steve?
Yeah.
Rabbi is wanting you to wake up.
Yeah, get up, Steve. Wakey, wakey.
He's up.
Good.
Oh wait, where's the camera? Look at hidden cameras. This one.
And
You
it,
believe me?
and
Yeah,
it-
I told you.
and it goes around and lands on the person who's talking.
Otherwise, it just goes around.
No, otherwise it probably stays with the last person. And but unless another voice comes up and
Oh, stay.
you may like also sometimes it picks up the sound from the TV and so then it like goes straight to the TV set, whatever. By the way, obviously you know that the TV is merely just mirroring this computer here. I just want everyone to see. All right, 7:01. Good to see everybody. Welcome back. I've missed this. This is I've told you before. I'm letting you in on my little dark secrets. Whether or not Torah study is better or worse, it's irrelevant to me. What I can say is I enjoy this considerably more than Torah study because the Torah study is. Well, maybe when we get to the later books, I'll start liking it again. But Genesis, Exodus, I've been reading these stories my entire life. But this is great. This is new material I get to study on my own, and I just love it. So I want you to know that because we're not starting Torah study till next week. So then the question was, well, should we therefore start this next week? I was like, nah, I kind of miss it. I want to go do this one. So you're part of I just love this class, and I'm so glad that you have stuck it out with me. Why don't we? kind of do a little bit of like a intro to what we're doing here in a second. But why don't we just go around and take a second or two just to introduce ourselves and, hey, Mark, good to see you. And introduce ourselves and simply, you're welcome to say a word or two about you if it will be helpful. Like just so people get to know each other, who we're learning with. So why don't we start on screen, and then we'll come around to the people present. So since I think that the order of the Brady Bunch over here is different depending on. So Freya, do you mind starting, and then Charles, you'll go next, and then we'll keep going. So Freya, you go first.
Freya Sutton. I'm in Bowie, Maryland, and I'm very much looking forward to tonight. I've missed it over the summer, so.
Missed having you.
So I'm Charles Lerner, coming to you from the Eastern Shore, Maryland, which is why I'm not there in person, and I do enjoy this greatly, as well as tour study.
Thank you, Charles. Jerry, you get to go next.
Hi, I'm Jerry Falk, calling you tonight from beautiful downtown Davidsonville. Hopefully I will be able to be there in person next time. I just couldn't make it.
Well, fantastic. So I heard Stephen and Sharon talking there. So do you guys want to say hello?
You say Steve?
Stephen Schwartz and Sharon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can go first.
Hi, I'm the hand.
Okay, we see your hand, and we see Steve
over there in the center of the screen.
I'm having tiramisu.
We've been waiting for this class for weeks.
Welcome back.
Not having it during the summer.
Welcome. Glad to be back with you. Sandy, you're up.
Hi, everybody. I'm coming from Severna Park. I'm kind of too tired eyes to drive in the dark these days, but I'll do it when I need to. Anyway, I didn't get to do this last spring, so I'm happy to rejoin.
Wonderful. Well, good to have you back. Good to have you back, Sandy. Steve, you're up now.
Yeah, hi. Steve McCarroll from Annapolis. Picking this up after a little bit of a lapse last spring. Look forward to it.
No worries. No worries. Ellen, please.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I live in San Francisco, but I'm from New Orleans, and it is great to hear you say fantastic again, Ari. And now I get to learn from you.
Wait a minute. As in Ellen Cleary, who was my tutor when I was in ninth grade or something?
The very same one.
OMG. Oh, so let me tell you something. All right, well, I'll get back to this in a second. That's incredible. Kathy, introduce yourself, and then I'll say a word about Ellen in a moment.
Kathy Sitta. I'm from Edgewater. I'm joining tonight for the first time because I heard it's wonderful, and I look forward to it very much. I'm in Torah, and I thought this would be a good addition.
Fantastic, Kathy. I'm so glad to have you here. And so now let's work our way around this room. Gene, you get to start.
Sure. I'm Gene Rishkov. I live in Arlington. I started this class maybe 2 years ago, maybe last year. Already forgot everything, so
no, we didn't.
I'm so eager to start anew.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. By the way, Gene, whenever we would be on Zoom and you would see a screen that just said Olga on it, that was Gene. Gene using his wife's iPad or computer, and and it was, we were like, who's Olga? It's Gene. Bob, go ahead.
I'm Bob Sikora. I'm from Crofton, Maryland, and this is my second year, I think.
Yeah, or however long we've been doing it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I missed it, and I'm glad to be back.
I'm glad you're back too.
Well, I'm Karen Cook in Annapolis.
Karen, very nice to have you.
I'm Jim Wagman. Karen and I used to drive from different directions, but now we come from the same direction in Annapolis. These studies of the sages, these give me a sense of Judaism in its formative period, which I never had as a child.
I agree. Me too.
And therefore, I'm very happy to learn about
Me too. Thanks for mentioning it. Tom, do you want to say hello?
Tom DeCorpo. I live in Annapolis. I
come to as many of these as I can because it's always very rewarding and learn a lot that seems really important.
I'm glad. Thanks. Lisa?
Lisa Huffman, coming from Cape St. Clair.
Mhm.
And I think I started last year.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if you started last year, yesterday, last week. It's always fun.
Hi, I'm Mark Miller. I'm from Annapolis. I think I was with you a year before last, and I had a conflict last year.
That's right.
Which was killing me. And my ethics really fell off the table.
That's right. We noticed. We noticed there had been a big fall off of your ethics. Yeah.
I'm Ron Taub. Myself and my wife Wendy just moved to the area, enjoyed the company, and I'm glad to be joining.
So glad you're here too.
Yeah, we live in Arnold.
So glad.
I'm Mark Goodman. I live in Annapolis, and I guess this is my second year doing it.
Yeah, I have no idea how many years we've been doing this.
I share everybody's enthusiasm about it. I think about the stuff we talk about all the time.
So glad. So Ari Goldstein, thanks. We all know it. Now, Ellen Cleary. So Ellen Cleary, when I was contrary, no, this probably shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. But so I am very ADD. And I am happy to be on top of it now. And I'm medicated for it to this day. However, when I was younger, it was not the case. In fact, ADD was barely being kind of identified as an issue. And they just called us kids who just didn't pay attention, or kids who weren't, studious enough. I was quite a challenge academically, and it became as kind of like a big struggle for my parents because I was always kind of a smart kid, but when it came to school, I was a disaster, and I couldn't read anything. Because I couldn't concentrate. Like I literally could not read more than a paragraph, and even a paragraph was a chore for me. And my parents would send me to tutors. And I remember Ellen, if my memory serves me correctly, you lived on Broadway, almost about a block or two off of Claiborne Avenue. Is that correct?
I live right off of Napoleon Avenue on Jenna Street.
Wait a minute. I remember walking to your apartment on Broadway. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but point is that I remember that Ellen would sit there and I would bring my textbooks, and Ellen would literally read with me and say, "Okay." It's like, what did we read there? I don't know. Right. I remember one. I specifically remember. She won't remember this, but I do because I remember learning about clouds and some of the weather patterns. Because it was in my science book, probably this was 7th grade. When I say 9th grade, I probably was 7th grade or 6th grade. And I remember learning about weather and the different types of clouds and Ellen saying, nope, there's stratus, there's cirrus. She goes, here it is, it says it right here. And I'm like, I didn't read. Like, so what's that one again? I don't remember. Stratus. Okay, what's that one again? I don't remember. So I'm honored to be able to prove to Ellen that her work with me was worthwhile. Thank you so much, Ellen. I'm touched that you're here. So let me just give you a very quick background as to how we do this, because I know there are some new people here and some people who haven't been here in a while. So contrary to what people oftentimes say about this being a Class 1 PRK vote, it is. But I try my best to call it our SAGES class. And the reason why is because whereas if you go to every other synagogue in America, I don't want to say everyone, haven't been to them all. But if they do a Class 1 PRK vote, which inevitably everybody does, they're going to study this from the perspective of what these ethical statements are and, how we should think about our lives based upon, these statements of ethics that were from 2,000 years ago. I find that to be valuable, but I find that to be only a piece. And I think the more interesting piece, as Jim pointed out, is kind of jumping into the person and then saying, who was this person? What led that person to say these types of things? Sometimes we figure it out, sometimes we can't make the connection. And sometimes we just don't have enough information. But for me, I find the exploration of the person to be as interesting as the statements themselves. And so what we're actually doing here is diving into Talmud study. But not the Talmud. There's two types of Talmud. Granted, there's two editions of the Talmud. One is the Jerusalem Talmud, and one is the Babylonian Talmud. But I'm not talking about that. When I say there's two types of Talmud, what I'm saying is that the Talmud, even just the Babylonian Talmud, has two concepts of language. One is stories, and one is more legal. So, and you've been introduced to both types here, but you're more introduced to the stories. So you will see from time to time, we'll see something where it says, you know, when should you do this? Well, you're supposed, you know, you do it at this time. Or what? How tall should this? Well, this should be this tall. But most of it is, here's this person, and this is something that happened to this person, and it just helps us better get to know these people. I was influenced by various different authors, like Yochi Brandis in her book called The Orchard, or Milton Steinberg in his book called, which I read, by the way, Ellen, you'll be proud. You know, Milton Steinberg as a Driven Leaf, and various books like this, which help you kind of jump into the time period and introduce you to these individuals. Elie Wiesel is also very good at it too. And I thought, and I'm using those people as my inspiration for jumping into this language. And so what I do, how I prepare for this class is, I read over the Pirkei Avot text. I kind of make, you know, jot a couple thoughts about what I think it means. But then what I really do is then I dive into the sage who said it, and I start doing as much research into the sage as possible, so I can then put it on paper here and then have a conversation about the sage instead. Unfortunately, here we are starting the first week back, and we're starting with with Pirkei Avot 4:4 with a guy by the name of Rabbi Levitas. And the reason why I started by saying unfortunately is because, and I know in the past I've used expressions like, we don't have that much about that, we don't know that much about this person, but here's what we do know. Unfortunately, with respect to Rabbi Levitas, we have virtually nothing. And when I say virtually nothing, I mean nothing, right? So let's see, wait, where's my, I know, I just, here, virtually nothing. And so we have one very small thing about this guy, Rabbi Levitas. So why don't we'll read the Avot statement. Actually, we're going to read half of it because it is actually composed of two. So the first half of it is Rabbi Levitas, a man of Yavne, said, "Be exceeding humble spirit, for the end of man is the worm." That's our ethical statement. So instead of, because if you do a search for Rabbi Levitas in any search engine there is, including my go-to, which is called Safaria, then you will find two references to Rabbi Levitas. One of them is this very statement in Pirkei Avot, and one is in this other text called Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which means the expressions of Rabbi Eliezer. So in this document, we have, in our supplement, we have the expression, the one other expression from Rabbi Levitas. And with sadness, you're not going to get much out of it. But I will read it, and then we'll kind of go in a different direction. And it says, Rabbi Levitas, a man of Jamnia. Now that's Yavne. It is the Roman way of saying Yavne. Said, unless the father of a leprous person spit in his face, he will not be healed. As it is said, and the Lord said unto Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, would she not be ashamed 7 days? So let's start with, yeah, I didn't put this in here because I was going to try to explain what that's all about. Okay, because so it is talking about the father of a leprous person spitting in his face. We're not exactly sure who his refers to, but let's assume that it's the leper himself, but it could also be just a random person we don't know who is also in need of some sort of healing. Either way, what they're saying is that somehow a leprous father's saliva has greater healing powers than any other human being's saliva. But there's your two expressions from Rabbi Levitas. I mean, literally nothing else. But what we do know about Rabbi Levitas is we know roughly when he was living. And the reason why is because only the rabbis of the generation of what's called the Tanaim, which is the early rabbis. So we're talking about the 1st and 2nd century CE. Only those rabbis are included in this text. And so therefore we know roughly when he was living. We believe that he lived around, let's say, 100 CE. And we know where he lived, and that is Yavne. So instead of going in the direction of Rabbi Levitas, I think only just because I did want to start out with just fun, interesting readings from the Talmud, because that's the other thing. I get to pick and choose the fun readings from the Talmud when I do it. So what I thought we would do is do a little dive into Yavne instead of Rabbi Levitas. So Yavne is a town. It's a town in the Galilee, or the southern Galilee. But let's start with, I have a number of things I wanted to point out, and one of them comes from Josephus. So Josephus, again, is the Roman documentarian, essentially, of the war with, of a lot of things, but most specifically about the war with the Jews when the Romans had come in and were on their march towards conquering Judea. And so Josephus says, but then it must be observed that the multitude that came out of the country were at discord before the Jerusalem sedition began. For Titus went from Gishala to Sasates, and Vespasian from Caesarea to Jamnia and Azotus, and took them both. And when he had put garrisons into them, he came back with a great number of the people who were come over to him upon his giving them his right hand for their preservation. So the first piece to this is trying to communicate that at least Josephus, and Josephus is a worthy historian. What I mean by worthy is, of course, not everything is exactly historical, but Josephus is about as reliable of a historian for that period as we have. And what he is communicating is that Vespasian went from Caesarea, whereas he was living, to Yavne and Azotus, and then built forts and garrisons there and took those cities over. So these are now, what Josephus is communicating is what once was a Jewish city is now a Roman city. Just want to start there. It continues. Now, this is a very, very famous story from the Talmud, and some of you remember this because we did it, but obviously others haven't. And so let's talk about this next one, which is the very famous story about how then we got to Yavne. And the story is, the Gemara relates, by the way, just to tell you, for the most part, if you are looking at, if something is bold and not bold, it means that the bold is the actual text from the Talmud, and not bold is the help for you to understand it better. Please note, if for fun, from time to time, just read the bold and see how it goes. Okay, now, if you are looking at a paragraph that has no bold in it whatsoever, that means it's all the original text. Okay, so for example, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer is all regular, none of it is bold, which means that it was just all the text. So it's a more readable kind of a thing. Josephus is obviously a different story. And here we are now, we're in Gittin, which Gittin is the longer word for get. And you know what a get is, don't you? It's a Jewish divorce bill. And so this book of the Talmud is dealing with divorce. And none of this has anything to do with divorce. However, if you gave me 10 minutes, if you gave me 3 minutes, I could probably just read what was right before this and say, this is how they got to this. But it's just, now then what we're doing is just distracting. So this has nothing to do with divorce, but there was probably a good reason. Anyway, the Gemara relates. Abba Sikara was the leader of the Zealots, also referred to as Bir Yoneh, of Jerusalem, and the son of the sister of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. So, the most important rabbi, Yochanan ben Zakkai, has a nephew, and the nephew is, for lack of a better word, on the other team. But he's not on the Roman team. In fact, that's for sure just the opposite. He's on the other Jewish team. And what I mean by that is you had two different groups of people who had two different views about how we should move forward now that the Romans were laying siege on Jerusalem. And what were those two ways of doing things? One was fight, and the other one was work with them and see if we can preserve Judaism. Okay? Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was the rabbi and the leader of the group of people that wanted to study and preserve Judaism. And Abba Sikara, his nephew, was a fighter. They're both right and they're both wrong. I mean, we can have opinions about who's righter or wronger, who's the righterist and the wrongerist. I'm being playful, but you get my point. So they're both against the Romans to some degree, but they're against each other, and we'll get to that in a second. So Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai sent a message to him. Come meet me in secret. He came. Abba Sikara came. And Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, until when will you do this and kill everyone through starvation? In other words, and why? It's because just the same way that the Romans are laying siege on Jerusalem, the Zealots are laying siege from the inside. What they're doing is they're not letting anyone come in and they're not letting anyone come out. So they're fighting the Romans and not letting them enter. But in doing so, they're also making it so no one can get food and there's no availability. Now I'm remembering why this isn't getting. It's because in just prior there was a story about a woman who she'd got a divorce from her husband and she needed help getting food and this. Okay, I'm glad I remember that. So until when will you do this and kill everyone through your starvation? Abba Sikara said to him, what can I do? For if I say something to them, they will kill me. So he's the leader of a group, and his group has gotten too crazy for him. He doesn't even agree with how his group is doing it. He thinks there needs to be more of a balance. But unfortunately, the group, it's like he has created this mass of zealots that he can't even control anymore. So he said, what can I do? If I say something to them, they will kill me. Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, show me a method so that I would be able to leave the city. And it's possible that through this, there will be some small salvation. Interesting, I almost read this as some small salivation, and it would have been connecting to that original text that we read. But so some small salvation. Now, by the way, anybody is always welcome to interrupt me, ask questions at any moment. Okay, so we continue. By the way, all of these are part of the same, and you can see it says Gittin 56a 15, 16, 17. I took them paragraph by paragraph because it was easier for me to download it that way. But so just to tell you, so Gittin means tractate Gittin. 56a means page 56 on the A side of the page. The Talmud works in which, like, was it a folio, I think, in which it's you have a piece of paper as a page, side A, side B. So this is 56A, and 16 is just is Safari's way of saying it's the 16th paragraph of this. So Abba Sakara said to him, "This is what you should do." By the way, we're going to get to Yavna probably in about 5 minutes after reading this, but the point being is this is such a great story that I wanted to include the whole thing. Abba Sakara said to him, "This is what you should do. Pretend to be sick and have everyone come and ask about your welfare, so that word will spread about your ailing condition." So far, plausible deniability kind of thing. It's like, you're sick. I couldn't possibly have been doing X, Y, and Z. I'm the one over here who's got COVID. Afterward, bring something putrid and place it near you, so that people will say that you died. It's like, oh my God, what died in here? It's disgusting. Hey, he died. And then have your students enter to bring you to burial, and let no one else come in, so that the zealots not notice that you are still light, as the zealots know that a living person is lighter than a dead person. Why? Not sure.
Dead weight?
Yeah, I guess. Dead weight. Dead weight. Okay, so what we have is, just in case you're not following this completely, you've got Abba Sakara, the zealot leader, and his nephew is giving him a solution to how he can get out of Jerusalem, and that is pretend to be dead. Yochanan ben Zakkai did this. Elazar, Rabbi Eliezer, remember Eliezer? He's the one who was, for those of you who remember studying, he's one of our anti-heroes, heroes, whichever you want to call it. He's the one who was always very stern about making sure that a person knew every detail. He was famous for being a plastered cistern, nothing left. But one of his problems was he was so insistent on spitting out precisely what he had learned that he never actually kind of had creative thoughts, but rather he was so precise. Again, is that wrong? No. If you are going to see your financial advisor and they said, well, I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but what you ought to consider doing is X, versus the financial advisor that says, here is the tables, and this is what happens when you do this and this and that. Like, sometimes it's nice when you have someone who just regurgitates exact information, and then other times you want someone who can kind of see the information and then kind of think about it creatively. There's worth for both of them. So Eliezer was the student of Shammai. He was one side of that type of thinking, and then he entered from one side, and Rabbi Yehoshua, he's the opposite. He's the creative one, entered from the other side. So the two main alone come in to his house, and they take him out. When they arrived at the entrance of the city on the inside, not on the outside, they have to get out, and the inside is being guarded. The guards, who were of the faction of the Zealots, wanted to pierce him with their swords in order to ascertain that he was actually dead, right? So they're saying, oh, really? You're bringing someone out for burial? Well, let's just see. If he's dead, fine, let me just stab him 4 more times, and then we know he'll be dead. And Abba Sakara said to them, remember, the leader of that group said, the Romans will say that they pierce even their teacher. Like, don't let the Romans kind of have more reason to dismiss us or to ridicule us. The guards then wanted to at least push him to see if he was still alive. And again, Abba Sakara said to them, they'll say that they pushed their teacher. And the guards then opened the gate and he was taken out. So, okay, let's start with, do we really think this happened as it did? Who knows? I mean, it seems a little questionable whether, this story happened. But again, all it is now just telling us how we got to Yavne. Go ahead.
We know the siege of Jerusalem happened.
That happened. That's correct.
And we know that the Jews survived.
Yes,
as a people.
yes.
So.
So at least part of the story is correct,
Yeah.
is historical. Oh, and I'm not questioning generally part of every story. I guess what I'm saying is, do we really know that there was, that the guards, the Jewish zealot guards wouldn't let us out? I'm not sure. No, and it's possible. I'm going to say yes until I learn otherwise, but I'm just not necessarily assuming that that is. I would say, well, there's reason for us to believe that that was the case. Let's take a look at the story. But, you know, and then, or do we really believe that these sophisticated people who were keeping people in the city then would have been as easy to persuade not to stab and push just because they don't want to be ridiculed by the Romans? Unclear.
Just check to see if he was breathing.
True, but then again, probably the smell kept them away.
Put a mirror under
But-
his nose, yeah. That's a little-
And then but the last thing is, you could say, but he, you know, whether or not he had control of his own soldiers, he still was the leader, and so therefore maybe that's the reason why he got through. In any event,
cynic that I am, the first thing I thought about was, yeah, he says he wants to save the Jews. Isn't that heroic? Maybe he just wants to save his own life.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. In fact, well, you're going to kind of get to that in that's not just cynic. That's actually going to be addressed twice in this text.
Okay.
So let's get so when Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai reached there, i.e. the Roman camp, he said, "Greetings to you, the king. Greetings to you, the king." Vespasian said to him, by the way, remember, it's just for fun. Look at this without the when reached there, he said, "Greetings to you, the king. Greetings to you, the king said to him, you are liable." Like, it's impossible. It's incredible how people learn this stuff. Me, I don't know how I did this. And half the time it's because I got the benefit of this English translation. It's like, or I just listen to lectures about these things and then I just learn them and hear them and finally, you know, you learn them, but it's hard.
So why did they skip all the words?
Because it's like they didn't need it. They were able to do it. They kind
This
of
was like shorthand.
shorthand, yeah. Vespasian said, "You're liable for 2 death penalties. One, because I'm not a king, and yet you call me king. And furthermore, if I am a king, why didn't you come to me until now?" Okay, so what he's saying is, you know, Yochanan's coming up to him, and, you know, Yochanan is trying to be deferential and to, you know, to please him and to honor him. And that backfires immediately because Vespasian says, "You said that, I don't even know where to start. Number one, I'm not king, so you're guilty of that. And if you really believed all this stuff, you should have come to me earlier." In any event, Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "As for what you said about yourself, I'm not king. In truth, you are a king. If not now, then in the future. As if you are not a king, Jerusalem will not be handed over into your hand, as it is written, and the Lebanon shall fall by a mighty one." And mighty one means only a king, as it's written, and their mighty one shall be of themselves. And Lebanon means only the temple, as it is stated, that good mountain and the Lebanon. And as for what you said with your second comment, if I am a king, why didn't you come to me until now? There are zealots among us who did not allow us to do this. So what he's saying is, you're gonna be the king. So might as well just start that way. And the second point about why I didn't come out to you sooner, I couldn't. I tried, I couldn't. Not my fault. Correct. Understanding that Yochanan ben Zakkai was prepared to ask him not to destroy the temple, right? So Vespasian's like, all right, how soon before you say don't destroy the temple? Vespasian said to him, you know, if there's a barrel of honey and a snake wrapped around it, wouldn't they break the barrel in order to kill the snake? In other words, if you have a cobra wrapped around a barrel, just take a huge boulder and smash everything. Yes, you're breaking the barrel, but you're also killing the cobra. By the way, Lisa, I apologize if I'm talking about dead animals in your presence.
Snakes are fine.
Fine to talk about dead snakes. Okay, fair enough. She's a veterinarian, that's why. Okay. As a vet, which war did you serve in for being a vet? Okay, back to this. In a similar fashion, I'm gonna destroy the whole city of Jerusalem in order to kill the zealots that are barricaded within it. So Yochanan ben Zakkai was silent and did not answer. In light of this, Mark, here we go, Rav Yosef later read the following verse about him. And some say it was Rabbi Akiva. And they applied this verse. I am the Lord who turns wise men backward and makes their knowledge foolish. That is a very strong statement by either Akiva or Yosef, in which they say, you used to be smart, but now you're an idiot. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai should have said the following to Vespasian in response to the snake. Take tongs, remove the snake, kill it, leave the barrel intact. In other words, right? Don't destroy Jerusalem just to get rid of the zealots. Go out, pluck the zealots out one by one, and leave Jerusalem alone. In the meantime, as they were talking, a messenger arrived from Rome and said to him, rise, for the emperor has died, and the noblemen of Rome plan to appoint you as their leader. So, what's happening here? All of a sudden, Yochanan ben Zakkai was right about what he said. And Vespasian is suddenly going, wow, you said that about me. The emperor had already died when you came to tell me that, but we just didn't know it at the time. But he had died, you called me king, you clearly have some sort of magical power or capacity for able to kind of see the future or see some distant lands, but you have abilities.
So is this reminiscent of Joseph and the Egyptian pharaoh?
Certainly you could say that, but I don't think that was the intention, but certainly you can make that statement. There's no question. So it says, okay, all right. At the time, Vespasian was wearing only one shoe. Again, think about this. This is the text really says, after it says, plan to appoint you as their leader. And then the text would say, was wearing one shoe. He tried to put on the other one. It would not go on. He tried to remove the other. It would not come off. That one may be a little bit easier, but like it's remarkable how they just thought like anyone would be able to understand this. At the time, Vespasian was wearing one shoe. When he tried to put on the other shoe, it wouldn't go on his foot. He then tried to remove the other shoe that he was wearing, but it would not come off, right? Because he wants a pair of shoes that match. And so he's like, all right, I'm wearing one, let me put the other one on. Doesn't fit. So he says, all right, well then I'll get new shoes. So let me take this one on, can't get the other one off. It's like Cinderella. Now you said Joseph, I think more like Cinderella. But he said, what is this? And again, there's Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai with the answers. He said to him, don't be distressed or troubled, because good tidings have reached you, and as it is written, good tidings make the bone fat, from Proverbs. Now, what's fascinating about this, in my opinion, is that he's quoting the Bible, the Proverbs, to Vespasian. And as if Vespasian cares, but he does. But because Vespasian does recognize the significance of this, and so it matters to him, right? But just think about it. If like how many times I'm sure you've experienced when Jews for Jesus come to your door. Hello, and they're like, we want to tell you about this, and let me tell you, you know what it says in the Philippians, the Thespians, and like, well, that's great. Like I care, right? It's like, my point is that it's kind of interesting though that Vespasian buys into what the proof texts that Yochanan ben Zakkai is giving him. So it continues, right? So his good tidings have made your bone fat. In other words, your feet have like swelled up because of these good tidings. So what's the remedy? What must I do in order to put on my shoes? Yochanan ben Zakkai said, have someone with whom you are displeased come and pass before you. As it is written, a broken spirit dries the bones. So we have the antidote from the book of Proverbs also, 2 chapters later, and that is that just have a person come by you who you don't like, and I'm sure that will reduce all your swelling. He did this, his shoe went on his foot, And Vespasian said to him, since you are so wise, why didn't you come to me until now? Zakkai said to him, but didn't I already tell you? And Vespasian said to him, I also told you what I had to say. So, but in other words, I've already given you my answers. So then, though, Vespasian kind of changes his mind a little bit, because at first he wasn't the emperor, but now he is. And Vespasian said to Yochanan, I'm going to Rome to accept my new position, and I'll send someone else in my place to continue besieging the city. But before I leave, ask something of me that I can give you. Yochanan said to him, give me Yavna and its sages. Meaning, let me have one city where I can, have a school and a yeshiva, so I can continue to teach and study and let anyone who's interested in peaceful existence, not like the zealots, but peaceful existence who want to study Torah, let them come. Right? So that's number one. Give me Yavna and sages and do not destroy it. And remember, it's a Roman town, which we just read earlier. And spare so number two, spare the dynasty of Gamliel. So that's an interesting one. We did talk about this once before, but it's possible you don't remember. So Gamliel is from this royal, is like King Charles, Prince William, because, well, actually now he's King William. In other words, it's the family of Gamliel always served as the primary political position in Judea. And because of this change, it's possible that that now that Rome was going to destroy the city of Jerusalem, and they were going to spare this, give them Yavna, but Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. Yochanan ben Zakkai wanted to retain that kind of the monarchy. And you put that in air quotes, monarchy, because this is the family from whom that the leader of the Sanhedrin comes. And so therefore he says, spare this family. Even, by the way, Yochanan was a rival of Gamliel's. It didn't matter. He still felt responsible to keeping that dynasty functioning. So that was number two. And then number three, this random one, and it was earlier in the story, which was prior. It was actually in the story about the woman. But it's a story about this guy, Rabbi Tzadok, who was paper thin and starving. And that what he would do is, in the Talmud it talks about if he ate a date, that you could see the date going through his body, like under his skin. That's how thin he was. And so then he says, and the third thing is, and lastly, give me doctors to heal Rabbi Tzadok. Okay. Part two to answer your question, Mark. Rav Yosef read the following verse about him, and some say it was Rabbi Akiva, who turns wise men backward and makes their knowledge foolish. Why? Because he should have said to him, leave the Jews alone. Save everybody. Instead, he said, save me and my students. Jim, what were you about to say?
I was wondering, we haven't heard of it. Just a minor thing. Who is this Rabbi Tzadok?
Right, we haven't heard of him yet.
Okay.
He, as I said, he was in just prior to where we picked up the story. They were talking about him and about how he was emaciated and again, paper thin, and he was barely eating anything. So, wait, did I skip a page? No, okay. So that is the story about how there's more to the story, but obviously there's limits now, which I could give to you, but that's the story of how we returned to Yavna, and that is indeed, which you bring up in a very cynical but correct way, and to this day, there is that debate about should he have, it goes back to the debate that he was having with his own nephew. Should you fight, or should you just try to preserve what you can? And when you preserve what you can, does it mean, like Yochanan went from the perspective of, I want to preserve also Judaism. And I'm prepared to sacrifice people to preserve Judaism. Do I agree with that? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't like it. I certainly wouldn't have been so quick to come to that decision as he did. Then again, do I agree with the zealots who were like, let's fight, like as if they really thought they were going to defeat the Romans? It was impossible.
How much time do you think went by?
Between what and what? Just the
this
story we read?
Yeah.
Presumably that's happening over the course of like a day or two, but it's hard to know.
Well, it strikes me that Vespasian had already told him what was realistic in this, because he'd said, don't destroy the barrel, just kill the snake, and he'd said that ain't happening.
Right.
And then he said, and somebody else is coming.
We're
The
still
barrel
doing
is
this,
gone.
right?
The barrel is gone.
That's right.
So
Writings on the wall.
I think he did what he could, given
The limitations.
the limitations.
Yeah, go. What was that?
Maybe, he was given the wisdom to say, look, I'm going to heal your foot. And now I healed your foot. So now,
So now I've got more,
I've
I have a
got
little more
less.
latitude to ask.
You're right. I'll do you a favor. You healed my foot. Now give me your one wish.
Right. It's like, what is it? The mouse that pulls the thorn out of the lion's paw. Right now that I did this for you, suddenly I may have a little bit more room to dance around and, without being eaten by you. Jim, what do you would say? And then Tom after you.
Isn't this exactly the situation with Gaza now, with Hamas there as the snake and refusing, and so some people are saying you should not cause any casualties in.
Fascinating. Yes, it's the exact same thing. Wow. It's the exact same thing. It's a great insight. Tom, what were you about to say? And if you want, Tom, by the way, you're welcome to say, oh, I was going to say the same thing Jim was going to say, and then we'll think of you as extraordinary also. Because that's what I would be doing in a moment like this. After my next question would be like, and how do you spell, right? And then instead you say, oh, that was going to be my question too. And then I'm like, wow, impressive, Tom.
You can decide for yourself, but it seemed to me that I was impressed that this Roman emperor could be greets this emissary with one shoe on.
Or maybe that's
Strikes me as
precisely
being improbable. So why is it in this story?
right. That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to this. Like, what's with the shoe, and why did they? I mean, okay. One thing is clear is that there, I guess, was a need for somehow, some way, for them to talk about the capacity for Yochanan to have great wisdom to share that with Vespasian as a way of ingratiating him with Vespasian. But why this? Why wasn't it just something more just, I predict these things and then never really have to go into like the shoe and the...
The shoe part is not unrealistic. I'll explain why. But in other words, he came to him and he was admitted him immediately.
Right.
There's a story about a Roman consul in Egypt in the time of Cleopatra, and someone came to him and into his assembly hall. He was in the middle of defecation, and they came to him.
Right.
So this is not unrealistic.
Right.
Yeah.
He was getting dressed.
And I know how he got the shoe on.
How?
He said, while we wait for that person that you don't like,
Oh.
go ahead and put your feet up.
Very good. Jim, I have a question for you. So in this alternate or the analogous situation that you described in the modern day, we're now in the role of Vespasian.
Yes.
Okay. So how would you, in this story, Vespasian says, we're not going to save the barrel, I'll give you something else. Okay, so then they get into the oven. How would you advise us, the Jewish leadership?
They would need to ask us for something.
Well, somehow, how do you, first you got to get into the conversation and
True.
let them ask. So,
True.
yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part. This one, if we can, believe the situation happened like this, Yochanan gets out of Jerusalem by the grace of his uncle,
Nephew.
or his nephew.
Right.
And then he's allowed right in front, here, come and see
Right. So
Vespasian.
clearly it's because, I mean, he was a leader. Like,
Yeah.
you know, now, did Vespasian care that he,
Yeah.
probably, I think he cared that he was a leader. Did he like know of him? I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, so, you know, he got out and they said, you know, Vespasian, we have someone here who is a representative. And so it doesn't surprise me that he got an audience with Vespasian, but it is kind of funny that he, you know, it was one shoe. Like, I'm surprised Vespasian didn't say, all right, give me, I'll be out in 5.
Yeah.
I just have to finish going to the bathroom and then get my shoes on. But so the fact that he had an audience is possible, certainly. But you know, like why he didn't put a shoe on first, I don't understand.
The answer to Mark's question is that the Palestinian Authority and other Arab leaders have to agree to get rid of the snake, to get rid of Hamas, and
Right.
instead ask for maybe self-determination or a state which can be trusted by Israel.
That's correct. It's like, but as of this moment, I mean, we don't know to what
But
degree.
they're afraid of getting rid of them because
Yeah.
they could be killed.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Tom, go ahead.
So after Yonah ben Zakkai goes to Yavna, starts the shul.
Yeah, this right, the yeshiva, the school, right?
And was it at that time, or was it like another generation that Hillel and Shammai?
Hillel's before. Hillel and
They're
Shammai
before this.
were the teachers of Yochanan, and Eliezer followed Shammai. Yochanan knew both, learned from both, which made him exceptional. Eliezer was a disciple of Shammai through Yochanan, and Yehoshua was a disciple of Hillel through Yochanan.
And Akiva was there with.
Akiva was a student of Eliezer and Yehoshua. He's the next next half generation. So I thought we could a little bit more like. Here's just an example of the intellectual strength of Yavna. So in the passage of Eruvim deals with Eruvs, and Eruv is that little piece of string around a town, which makes it a house, a residence. If you follow what I'm saying, anyway, again, this has nothing to do with Eruvs, but I don't know how it does. I would have to really study it, but point is that, and this isn't really to go into the specifics about this, but merely to point out that, you know, it was taught in a Baraita, there was a distinguished disciple at Yavna who could, with his incisive intellect, purify the creeping animal, explicitly deemed ritually impure by the Torah, adducing 150 reasons in support of his argument. In other words, what it's saying is there were rabbis at Yavna who could make a ham and cheese sandwich kosher. With 150 reasons why a ham and cheese sandwich is kosher, even though we know that it is not just milk and meat, and also pork. But make that sandwich kosher. So that's what they're trying to say here. He could purify the creeping animal. Creeping animal is not kosher, and I can make that one. I can prove why it is. And what they're saying is that they mentioned in the Talmud about the intellectual strength and rigor of the people who were at Yavna. There was also a famous decision at Yavna, and I put a paragraph in from Jonathan Sacks. No. This is not from Jonathan. That's something different. Sorry, but from this book called Jewish Spiritual Heroes, in which it says the scholars of Yavna gathered in a place which was called the Vineyard of Yavna. I wanted to use that because I also want to, the meaning of this name is not entirely clear, and some claim that it refers to the manner of being seated in rows, just as vines are planted in a vineyard. That's what I've always learned it to be. But by the way, vineyard is karmi, karam. I was thinking something different. Sorry, I just got a little off topic. In Yavna, the decision was finally made that in all disputes between the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel, the law would be practiced according to the school of Hillel. It was there that they made that determination. This decision was arrived at as a result of a bat kol, which means a bat kol is the way of referring to a voice from heaven, a God's voice, which announced that the opinions of the school of Shammai are also from God, but that only the opinions of the school of Hillel should be put into practice. Now, that was a really critical thing. Why was it critical? Because we couldn't have two different versions of Judaism that are like, we have it now in a very smaller extent, not Reform and Orthodox, but between like Sephardic and Ashkenazic. You get the Sephardic family, they're eating rice on Passover. An Ashkenazic family, of course you can't eat rice, right? So that's like an example of why it can, and if those two families, they can't even mix ever, because it's like the Ashkenazic would think of the Sephardim as like blasphemers, right? And so as a way of just kind of unifying all of the people, they said we can't have two different versions of what Judaism is. So that's why they did it. The story from the Talmud describing what this is referring to goes like this. Rabbi Abba said that Shmuel said, for 3 years Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagreed. Some said the halakha is in accordance with our opinion, and others said the halakha means law. The law is in accordance with our opinion, right? They're this very thing. One says coffee is kosher, the other one says coffee is not kosher. And ultimately, a divine voice, that's the bat kol that was referred to, divine voice emerged and proclaimed, both these and those are the words of the living God. In other words, you both have made compelling arguments. And I can't really say one's wrong because it's not wrong. It just so happens that both of you are right. However, the halakha, the law, is in accordance with the opinion of Hillel. God says, however, the law is going to be in accordance with Hillel. The Gemara asks, since both these and those are the words of the living God, why was Hillel privileged to have the halakha, the law, established in accordance with their opinion? The reason is that they were agreeable and forbearing. Showing restraint, they would teach both their own statements and the statements of their opponents also. Moreover, when they formulated their teachings and cited a dispute, they prioritized the statements of Beit Shammai to their own statements, right? So what God, or I mean, we know it wasn't God, but what the authors said was the reason why Hillel was picked. I mean, we can get cynical and say we really know the reason why Hillel was picked, and that's because he was more likable and there were more disciples of his. Who wanted to be a disciple of Shammai and Eliezer, in which all it was basically memorizing the introduction to the Canterbury Tales? I had to do that, and I'm still like, I mean, you know what? Ellen Cleary may have helped me memorize that for all I know. Wand on April with the shore sutta, the druth of March and pierced to the ruta and bothered every vine and switched liquor of which virtue and judgment is the cure. Like that's the first couple sentences. Anyway,
Wow, you still know that. I'm impressed.
Thank you very much. Something I've longing to go on pilgrimages. Anyway, so who wants to, when you have Shammai and Hillel, or Eliezer and Yehoshua, who are the disciples of them, everyone of course is drawn to to Hillel, and so therefore it was like an easy, because they would have had an uprising on their hands if they had said, oh no, it's going to be just Shammai. So but what's fascinating is, right, it says they're both right, but the reason why we're picking Hillel, again, the reason why they say they're picking Hillel is because he was just nicer. Isn't that interesting, right? It's because he mentioned both points. He didn't just say his own, and he even prioritized the opponent's point. Like, and I guess what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be great? Like, that's, I assume that you're all thinking the same thing I am, which is like, God, in our world today, wouldn't it be great if people, when they were arguing, actually did so with kindness as opposed to just vitriol. If people, when they were arguing, actually said, before I give you my point, let me just make sure that I have your point down correctly. And let me make sure I can articulate your point first. And then I will share my point too. Like, wow, wouldn't that be great? I mean, you know, like,
Carnegie.
What's that?
Dale Carnegie.
Right. Well, right. Again, I'm intentionally not naming names. You can name your own names, but like, wouldn't it be great if we, you know, just had we were in a place in which it was just civil discourse returned, and it was legitimate. You know, back in the day when you know, during Tip O'Neill's time being the Speaker of the House, when you may have kind of argued, but then you also got, you know, sat and grabbed a scotch and a cigar, you know, with just the guys, of course, but okay, and you know, and you sat there and literally talked it out, and you said, wait, let me understand that better. Maybe we can work on a compromise. Let's figure this out. We're smart people. We can figure this out. Now there's just no talking. Everyone's just screaming, yelling, calling the other people names, and making zero progress. Both, if God saw that, they would say, neither of you should be, you know, the words should go to neither of you because neither of you are nice. One is particularly mean-spirited, but you get my point. Now we're over a little bit, but let's just finish the last two parts before, and because this is the end, these last two paragraphs are the end of this Yavna part. So at Yavna, I wrote leadership, but I should have also wrote collaboration, because this is both a story, a couple sentences about both leadership and collaboration. So Rabbi Akiva continues, when I came and presented the matter before Rabban Gamliel of Yavna. So he's talking about a law. We don't know what it is. Actually, we do. I just didn't include it. I can't remember what it was anyway. When they're discussing a legal issue, and Akiva had been in Babylonia, meeting with some people there, and he learned there from somebody I can't remember. He comes back and he provides an answer, a statement to Gamliel. So number one is it's showing that Gamliel was preserved as Yochanan had requested, and so that is the leadership. Again, Gamliel may not have been the greatest intellect, but he's still the leader. And Akiva, who probably was the greatest intellect, still respected that leadership. Came to Gamliel of Yavna, grandson of Gamliel the elder. He rejoiced at my words. That is to say, Gamliel rejoiced at Akiva's words and said, we have found a companion who agrees with Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. So what this is basically saying is there was a big dispute, but not such a big one because no one agreed with Ben Bava about something until Akiva came and said, you know what, you know, I learned this from there and I'm bringing this back to you, and I'm kind of feeling compelled by this argument that they made in Babylonia, and I'm sharing it here. And so now, you know, it's not just Yehuda ben Bava who believes this, but I'm in it too. And, you know, and there's people over there who believe this too. And suddenly Gamliel is saying, wow, this means that it's not a cut and dry case. We can go on and really get into this and discuss this again. Meaning, I guess what I was trying to say was not only is it Gamliel's leadership, but kind of a spirit of collaboration and discussion, which really was central to what Yavna was. And then the last thing, which I thought was just a worthy little addition because it applies to this very day. The Baraita cited previously, again, Baraita means a statement that's not in the Mishnah. So it's not an official statement that's going to be addressed by the Talmud. However, unofficially, it's going to be addressed by the Talmud. Anyway, the Baraita cited previously taught that the halacha against reciting a text out of order applies to the Amidah prayer as well. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this? As it is taught, Shimon ha-Pakuli arranged the 18 blessings of the Amidah prayer before Rabban Gamliel in their fixed order in Yavne. So I guess we can skip the rest of it. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that what we know of, maybe you've heard of it this way. So we don't do this on Shabbat because you don't do it on Shabbat. However, every other service other than Shabbat, there's something called the Shmona Esrei. I'm sure there are a handful of people who have heard that expression before. Shmona Esrei is a Hebrew word which means 18. There are 18 benedictions or blessings that are said as part of the Amidah prayer, or the Tefillah prayer that I call it. And that is, it starts with the Avot and Ibahot. We do that at Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohe. And then the next one, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, that's called the Gevurot. And then Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh U'Kedoshim B'Chol Yom Yalelu Chasel. That's called the Kedusha. That's the 3. Shalom Rav is 18. So we've got 3, and then you got the 18th. So that leaves 14, of which they're all petitionary prayers, meaning we're asking God for something. Health, prosperity, rains, various different things. We don't ask for God for things on Shabbat. So therefore, those are omitted on the Sabbath. But so that's why you don't know the Shemona Esrei. That's done weekday services. But the point is that whole portion of the service was instituted by these people at Yavne. That's what I'm trying to learn. So there was a lot of stuff that was happening: legal discussions, stories, living, relationships, the institution of services and worship, all that kind of stuff, all happened at Yavne. Yavne was, so when Levitas, we go back to our main man Levitas, was a man of Yavne. So we at least know who he hung out with, who his relationships, what the significance of being from Yavne was. He was considered to be a worthy student. He was considered to be kind of part of that in crowd. He wasn't just some crazy loner. However, we also know that he says this one statement, and that's it. That other little stupid one about spitting, who can, who's mute, right? So, and I have a theory. And that is this. His statement in Pirkei Avot, again, by the way, theory, I don't know this for certainty. His statement is, in our Avot, it says, be humble, because the end of man is a worm. Right? So now, what is he saying?
No clue.
What he's saying is, we're all going to just kind of just decompose. Like, we're all the same. You, me, we're all the same. We're all going to be dirt one of these days. We're all going to be, to be humble. You think you're all that? I can see the future, and this one's easy. You're going to be dirt one of these days. You're going to be You're going to literally be eaten and infested by worms. So you really want to go and start bragging right now? And what I think is that he really internalized that thought so much, and it was depressing. And I think, again, theory, but I think, because what's not here is any sense of, oh, but don't worry, when you die, you're going to go to the next world and everything is going to be great. No, he's like, no, you're just going to be worms. Right? And it was like either it was very depressing for him and he just couldn't continue, kind of like it was pointless. Or the other part, which is maybe a little bit more disturbing to me, but possible, is that maybe his colleagues blacklisted him because he was saying things which went against a very central idea of theirs, which is, if you're suffering now, don't worry, because when you die, it'll be better for you. Again, we don't have this crystal clear heaven and hell thing that I know is much more established in Christianity, but we do have an afterlife. Again, it's not and if you don't do good, you're going to hell. It's more of just know it's up there and God's watching and blah, 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 blah. But still, that was an important part of how these rabbis were functioning, is with this notion of the afterlife and what happens after we die. And he's saying it's worms. And it's very possible either that it was just a very depressing thing for him, or that he was just kind of shunned from the community because he was kind of getting kind of honest, and they didn't want to hear it.
Either way, though, you get the sense that this time period is really not only the establishment of rabbinic Judaism because the temple was destroyed, but the kind of tenets, or maybe, and certainly tons of evolution has happened, but the basic central tenets, and we're still arguing about them today.
And it was coming out of Yavna too, by the way.
And it was coming out of Yavna. And this is an important part of our origin story kind of thing. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. Now, okay, it's now 12 after, so we've gone over 12 months, which is fine. None of it was complaining that much. Let me just say one last thing to you. It's just a plug for something, because you are, on many levels, a part of my intended audience. For those of you who watched, did many of you see the 8-part series that we did on the history of Israel? Fine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the teacher was a guy by the name of Uri Feinberg.
Yeah.
He's coming to be a scholar in residence in Boston, Brooklyn, New York, and also doing something, I think, in Montgomery County. But he had some mix up with one of his places, and he's coming here to do just one session with us, not on the history of Israel. It's all happened in the last 24 hours. 24 hours ago, he wrote me about it. Today, I got back to him and we discussed it. He's coming Wednesday night, November 20th, 7 p.m. to 8:30. He's a great teacher. I'll probably see if you and you want to go, and we maybe do a dinner here for anyone who was on the trip or whatever. But the point is, But the point is that he's coming November 20th, 7 p.m. to 8:30 here. It's a Wednesday night, and we discussed the subject, and the subject is going to be how, I know I can't remember the title exactly, but the sense of it is how are Israelis feeling? And it's based, and he's going to take whether social media and images, some graffiti images and some poetry and some music that's being put out there. And he's going to try to help us kind of get a better sense of how people of Israel are feeling right now, a year after October 7th. So just want to say you're amongst my biggest audience for that. We will do it on Zoom, but we'll do Zoom or stream at least. But it should be a really worthy. I mean, he's such a great teacher and exceptional, and so really thoughts that he has is really worthy, and I could not more strongly encourage you to come. So Wednesday the 20th. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here. Thanks so much for I know it went over a little bit, but I think it's okay. And I wish you all the best and see you next week when we continue with Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, different from Ben Zakkai, and Ishmael ben Yochanan, which is the second half of that one ethics piece and the next one. So 4:4 second half and 4:5 we'll do that next week. Anyway.
Thank you. And where did you send the supplementary materials? Because I didn't.
I did. I sent it in our classroom, in our Google Classroom today.
Oh, okay. And how do I get to that again? I'll have to look and see if I still have them.
Well, it should have automatically just come to your inbox. So if you didn't, it means maybe you haven't signed up. I'll see if I can send you some info about that.
Okay, because I know I used to have it, but yeah, I don't have these latest materials. Thank you.
No problem.
Could you send that to me too, please?
Sure, we'll do. Yeah.
Thanks.
How about Me Too, Rabbi?
You got it. It's the Me Too movement over here. Anyone have a pen here? Wait, hold on one second. I just want to write down who's. So wait, hold on. Wait, don't leave. I want to get wait. So Sandy needs a copy of. We'll put on our Google Classroom. Jerry and Steve McCarrow. And what's your email address? I'll put you on it too.
Ron, RONTOBB @gmail.
TOBB?
Yeah, Tom Oscar Boy Boy.
Oh, but that's not, your last, is T-A-U-B is your last name, right? No, it's T-O-B.
TUPB.
God, why did I, okay, and what's Rontab at?
Gmail.
Got it. So you'll get also an invitation to join our Google Classroom, and it's just me, usually I send out just like a document ahead of time. But I also have, if you come, I'll have it printed for you. It's especially if you're online, then then it gives people and if some people just print it out.
Yeah, I had trouble printing that out
Yeah.
on my
So
side.
likewise, if I could.
Wonder why.
grab one
I
of
can only
these-
print
Take
like
it.
a page and a half.
Take it.
Yeah, I
Thank
can only
you.
print like